You sit in the kitchen early in the morning and briefly think you hear the purring again. Not loud and not clear, just a soft whisper, but your heart skips a beat. You walk into the room, even though you know exactly what you will find. Still, you go there because a deep, irrational part of you still hopes. If you know this feeling well, then you are absolutely not alone with it. Today you will find out exactly what really happens in your brain after death. The answer to this question is scientifically truly fascinating and wonderful at the same time. Behind this phenomenon lies absolutely no hallucination or ghost hour. Behind it lies pure love. Very concrete, measurable, and neurological love that is deeply encoded in your own brain. Stay until the end, then you will see these special moments differently. Let's start with what the brain actually does after many years together. Your brain is definitely not a passive storage medium, but a highly active prediction machine. It constantly learns anew every day what exactly will happen in the next second. These predictions become significantly stronger and much more deeply anchored with each repetition. If you woke up with your cat every morning for years, your brain learns. Morning means cat, and waking up immediately means a familiar, warm weight. These predictions are so incredibly deeply dug and firmly anchored in your head. Neuroscientists often call this important process predictive coding in their technical jargon. If the real sensory perception is missing, the brain fills the empty gap for a short time. That is the moment when you suddenly hear this familiar purring again. That is definitely not your imagination, that is just your own brain. Now I would like to tell you more about a very exciting psychological concept. This might sound spooky, but it is an extremely well-documented phenomenon in grief literature. In many studies with intensely grieving parents and pet owners, exactly the same pattern appears. 80% of all grieving people regularly report these real sensory appearances. 80% of those affected experience this regularly. That is absolutely no rare exception. In sad cat owners, this phenomenon is even particularly pronounced after the loss. Not only in our thoughts, but also very deeply in our own bodies. You turn over in bed at night and completely involuntarily make room for her. When you unconsciously look in the store to see which cat food is on sale today again. Your whole body remembers her and has deeply learned her presence. And that is absolutely no failure of your normal and healthy perception of reality in everyday life. Here is something exciting that probably no one has ever explained to you in this way. The so-called attachment system is an evolutionarily ancient and very important network in the brain. When your cat purrs softly or snuggles warmly and trustingly against you, oxytocin is released, exactly the same hormone as during a warm human hug. That means for you, the emotional bond to your beloved cat was enormously strong. And when this strong bond is suddenly and painfully completely broken by death, your brain desperately searches for this oxytocin that it has received from her for years. Because your brain knows and loves this source, it now calls intensely for her. You still hear her, because your brain quite simply still loves her. Now comes a part that personally touched me the best and the deepest. There is fascinating research on human grief by neuroscientists at Uppsala University in Sweden. They used special imaging techniques to show what happens in the human brain during deep grief. Your brain activates exactly the same regions as during a real and present perception. In other words, if you think deeply and lovingly of your cat today, for your brain, that is absolutely no past and no memory, but pure present. In these deep moments, the brain does not distinguish between real experience and mere memory. And that means for you, every time you think of her lovingly and deeply, This is not invented poetry, but the hard and wonderful reality of modern neuroscience. And that completely changes how we should actually think about deep grief today. Let me tell you a short story about a special man here. Klaus lost his beloved cat Mimi after an impressive 13 shared and happy years. A full 6 months after Mimi's death, he still sometimes called her name in the kitchen. Not intentionally and not consciously, it just happened out of nowhere, like a reflex. Then he was immediately startled because he realized exactly what he had just done. But what happened to Klaus was absolutely nothing morbid or pathological for him. When we live closely with someone for many years, their presence is deeply stored. Procedural memory is the very deepest form of memory that we humans possess at all. This deep knowledge does not sit at all in our clear and conscious everyday thinking. Klaus called Mimi's name just as unconsciously as one rides a bike again after years. And this behavior is definitely no disease or mental disorder in grieving people. But here is something else important that I want to give you on your way. These sensory appearances and ghosts decrease more and more with passing time. It learns that this old pattern no longer leads to the expected reaction now. Neuroscientists call this prediction error learning in modern research of the human mind. Every day that the expected and familiar purring of your cat simply does not come. It does not become more painful, but actually less and less intense and tangible for your senses. That is the natural and biological mechanism of letting go in human nature. And that means for you, you must never force yourself to forget her. Now I would like to speak to you more specifically about another very fascinating psychological phenomenon. Of all our senses, the human sense of smell is most directly connected to memory. The olfactory cortex has an extremely direct neural connection to the human amygdala. That means, a certain smell can trigger a memory and a strong emotion at the same time. When you smell your cat's soft blanket and the memory comes alive, then something incredibly powerful and very magical immediately happens in your wonderful brain. Not symbolically, but absolutely neurochemically in the finest structures of your head and brain. That is why so incredibly many grieving cat owners hold onto a blanket or a small toy. They do not do this out of pure sentimentality, but out of very deep neurological reason. And if you do that for yourself, that is really completely fine. I would like to finally tell you about something very special and important now. There is a special theory in modern and scientific grief literature today. It is called continuing bonds theory in technical terms, i.e., the theory of continuing attachment. Grief is rather the inner process of lovingly building up a completely new kind of relationship. Your beloved cat lives on safely forever in the depths of your own brain. She lives unconsciously in the everyday gestures that you still do for her today. In this soft purring that you sometimes still hear in the quiet house. It is a pure message from your own brain, which says very quietly and softly. And that is absolutely no sign of inner weakness or even mental craziness. Please write to me in the comments. When and where in the house do you still hear her? Because you are not alone with this, and your brain is working in the only possible way. There is something else extremely important that I absolutely must tell you today. When we grieve intensely, the complex architecture of our wonderful brain literally changes. Completely new and very strong synaptic connections are created every day in your mind. This is called neuroplasticity, the fantastic ability of the brain to rebuild and adapt. Grief is a deeply plastic and malleable process inside a grieving person. It gets to know a completely new version of your own life intensively and anew. And in this long rebuilding pause, these strange and strong sensory appearances often arise. They are a kind of strong neural echo from the old architecture of your beautiful past. The neural echo will certainly become a little quieter with passing time. And exactly these traces in you, this fine network of memories and habits. That is the wonderful legacy she surely left you in this world. There is a very well-known and renowned scientist at the American University of Rochester. This scientist says clearly that deep grief is not the final forgetting at all. It is definitely not the mere deletion of data, but a complex inner reorganization. Your brain is currently completely reorganizing how it understands the changed world today. They are like construction noise that arises because something extremely important is being built right now. And what is being newly built, there is a completely new and valuable relationship with her. Just bravely allow this building process and let these appearances come without much fear. They are absolutely not bad signs that you are stuck in your grief and not moving forward. Right in the middle of the most important, difficult, and beautiful process that the human brain knows at all. The eternal loving on beyond the death of your beloved animal into the quiet future. And this loving on is really the strongest proof that she ever existed on Earth.